Hello, my name is Carl Niji and I'm what's known as a Davis facilitator. I'm the owner-operator of a business called Overcoming Dyslexia, ADHD, learning disabilities and autism in Ottawa. This is a short introduction to a longer video that you're about to see. This video was recorded in May 2025 and is part of a series that is called Davis Neurodiversity. It was hosted by Davis UK and Ireland, and the series was a series of events that was done over a 2-day period. There were 12 events in total. I was asked to present at one of them, being a Davis facilitator myself, being severely dyslexic myself, then having done Davis programs and then worked with clients of all ages. Over the last 15 years, I'm in a somewhat unique position of a sort of before, during, and after. So I suppose I joke on this video about being a Davis guinea pig. Other than that, the video really speaks for itself. If you'd like to continue this conversation with me, and you live in the Ottawa area and interested in doing a Davis program with me, then you can go to my website that will be in the link below. If you're in the UK or Ireland, there's going to be a link for their main Davis website there. If you're anywhere else in the world watching this video, then I suggest you go to the main Davis link, which will also be in the description. That's the main Davis page, and you can find the Davis facilitator nearest to you. You can fill out a contact form at any of those websites, and someone will be in contact with you quite shortly afterwards. The event covered topics such as dyslexia, dyscalculia, ADHD, and the ASD spectrum, both verbal and non-verbal. So it was a whole event that was done. The video you're about to watch is my part of that, my presentation of that, and Davis UK very kindly sent this to me so I could post it on my YouTube channel. What you're also going to see is a gentleman called Richard Whitehead. He's going to come on and introduce a little bit about Davis, then he's going to introduce me, then you'll see Richard at the end talk a little bit more about Davis in general. That's it for now, and see you in the next video.
So welcome back, everybody, to Davis Neurodiversity Online. I'm absolutely delighted now to welcome my colleague Carl Niji to the event. Carl, I'll just briefly introduce you, if I may. Carl was born in the UK and was once illiterate. He was diagnosed with severe dyslexia at the age of 21. After years in construction, fine furniture making and film, he discovered the Davis approach at age 40 and finally learning to read. Carl trained as a Davis facilitator in 2009, and he's now based in Ottawa in Canada. And Carl has helped nearly 200 clients transform their learning challenges and discover the hidden strengths of neurodivergence. Carl, a very warm welcome.
Hello.
And I think the way we're going to construct this part of the session is that we're going to play a video. So Carl is quite a significant, I would say, YouTube influencer. Actually, you've got a very strong video presence on YouTube talking about your dyslexic identity, the Davis methods, neurodivergence. And so we thought that we would run a video that Carly recorded a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I actually recorded this for something, I think during COVID. I think it may have been, memory serves me right, it was something that Axel asked me to do for something he was doing almost 4 years ago, I think. And it was originally the question was, why did you become a facilitator? And then I've changed it to my experience. So it's quite a lot missing. It's a very, very abridged version of my life history and my dyslexic history. That's what it is.
Perfect. Well, thanks, Carl. So this is Carl growing up dyslexic. with a view from adulthood. And just a little word about us, in case in case this is the first of our sessions that you're joining and you don't know that much about Davis. So Davis is a global network of expert practitioners called facilitators and trainers. There's several hundred of us operating across all of the populated continents of the globe. So we'll be showing you later on the different options that you have to enable Davis to touch your life or the life of somebody close to you. In the meantime, here is Carl.
Hello, my name is Carl Niji, and I am the owner-operator of a business called Overcoming Dyslexia, ADD, ADHD, and Learning Disabilities in Ottawa, Canada. I'm what's known as a Davis Dyslexia facilitator, and I am also dyslexic myself. I've been asked today to make a short video about why I became a Davis facilitator and my journey as a dyslexic person. That in one way is a very big question and a very long answer, but I will do my best to really keep it as short as possible. My earliest memories of being dyslexic are about 10 years old, just really realizing for the first time that I couldn't actually do what adults were asking me to do, however hard I tried. I have other memories younger, but they're more fractured and they sort of come in, it's sort of more as pictures in my thinking. I remember one of about 8 years old around maths, and I just couldn't understand what my mother was trying to teach me about maths and adding. And her being very angry and very upset that I couldn't understand how you don't add, how could you not add 3 and 7, how you put them together, and me looking at those two shapes and going, well, those two shapes don't go together, and her saying, so don't be silly. So I have memories going back younger, but about 10 is when I really realized that I couldn't do what adults wanted me to do, and all these other kids could. That, if you fast forward a little bit more, my mother tells me a story of me going to her with books as we were packing up a bookshelf, and saying, God, I really wish I could read these books, and her being really upset because there was so much sort of longing in my voice. My mother did try very hard. I had 3 tutors. I remember most of them getting angry with me eventually, which was really the thing that puzzled me, that eventually it didn't matter how hard I tried, people always just seemed to get really angry with me in the end. And I just became like, why are they getting so angry? I'm trying hard. I had 3 tutors. I think the youngest one was about 10. My mother had a degree in English literatures and was actually a school teacher for a while. So it wasn't that people weren't trying around me. In fact, people were actually trying incredibly hard. But it just wasn't sticking. It wasn't working. Now, I'm 52, so we're talking 40 years ago. 40 years ago, there weren't the psychological educational assessments that we have now. My mum tried taking me to a psychiatrist to get me tested for dyslexia, but the results that came back just terrified her, to be honest, and they were very upsetting for her because they weren't what they are today. They were very crude. And I basically got told by a psychiatrist that I was lazy and I should go away and read a book. But for me, I was becoming more inquisitive as to why I couldn't do this thing that everyone else said was really easy, but for me it was very, very hard. That really met its zenith when I was about 14, and I was in school and I almost got expelled for having an argument with a teacher when a teacher was saying to me, come on, Carl, pay attention, concentrate. And at this point, I was really fed up, and I had been doing a lot of repetitive phonetical drilling in school. I think I was doing 2 or 3 hours a week where I had to listen through headphones to the words on the page. Someone would say them and I would repeat them forwards and backwards. And they were now what I understand as what we call trigger words on the Davis program. And I would do it relentlessly for 2 years, 2 or 3 times a week. And I was just getting more and more angry that it wasn't working. So when a teacher eventually, and of course I was being accused all the time of not concentrating, not trying hard enough, not paying attention. So when a teacher turned around and said, come on, Carl, pay attention, focus, I rounded on her at sort of age 14 and just said, look, you tell me how you pay attention and I'll do it the way you do it, and then I'll be able to bloody well read, pardon my language, but it was a lot stronger language than that. And I remember really the look on her face more than the dialogue, but there was this stunned look on her face where she realized that, and I realized that she could not teach me the thing I needed. I realized in that moment, and I think she did as well, that I did not need to know about history, I did not need to know about geography, I did not need to know maths, I did not need to know whatever subject we were studying. What I needed to know was how to concentrate my thinking, because my thinking didn't work like everybody else's. And we both realized in that moment that she could not teach me the thing I needed. Concentrated. And if she didn't know how she did it, then how could she expect me to do it?
Still out of sync.
And that really was a turning.
Significantly out of sync.
I think really realistically when I gave up in school. I was about 14, got in a lot of trouble. I pushed back on it. I got very argumentative.
That's brilliant.
And I got a detention. Of course, I didn't turn up. At that point, detentions were a regular occurrence for me because I was never finishing my work and I couldn't do my homework, and I just gave up. I was about 14. I spent the last 2 years in school basically illiterate and not being able to do the work. And it was literally like a day prison for me is what it felt like. Emotionally and mentally, it became extremely hard. I became very depressed. I think I started smoking when I was sort of 14, experimented with things like alcohol and all sorts of other things as well. And I was really beginning to get it was a parent's worst nightmare, in effect, was beginning to play out. So I left school at 16. The day I turned school, I just ran out of the school gates. I just didn't want anything more to do with it. And I went to work. I started working in construction to begin with, and I started working with carpenters and plumbers, and I realized I was actually good with my hands. And eventually, sort of several years later, I found myself back in college at the age of 21, training as a furniture maker. And it was actually then, when I was 22, that I found out I was dyslexic for the first time. One of my instructors came to me when I was in college and said, look, Carl, if you don't get a piece of paper saying you're dyslexic, you're going to fail this program because you can't do the paperwork side of it. You can't do the reading and the writing, and it's showing up in your assignments that you're handing in. So I got tested, and it was very hard to find somebody to test me. Eventually I found somebody, and they said, yes, Carl, you are profoundly dyslexic. And so much so, I was also had dyscalculia, dysphasia, dyspraxia, dysgraphia. So I had a whole range of difficulties. I couldn't even remember my own telephone number. I used to carry it around and people's telephone numbers in my wallet, and I couldn't remember my own, so I had to keep it in my wallet. So for me, at the age of 22, I suddenly realized that I was dyslexic, and I had this name, I had this label, and I thought, well, what is it? And I started to ask questions about it. So I was both very happy because I had a name that I could then go and investigate, but I was also extremely angry because of the way I'd been treated as somebody who was dyslexic. And it was my childhood, it was not good when it came to the educational side of things. And that was not for want of trying and for people trying. But now I was an adult, and now I sort of really wanted to learn to read even more so, because it became even more about my future, my life. I had a career that I wanted, and I was more and more realizing that I had to do it. As a child, you can be accused of sort of not wanting it, not trying hard enough, not focusing, playing up, wanting to play with Lego instead of learn how to spell words. And yes, it is all very boring when you're a child and you can't do it. However, as an adult, when you're trying very, very hard to obtain a 3-year college course, and you're staying up at 2 or 3 in the morning, and you're really trying hard to read and decipher what's on the page, and all these methods you've been shown, which are largely phonetical methods,
aren't working for you, you start really searching your own thinking. And that's what I started to do. So for me, really, dyslexia got divided into two parts. There's this one part that we talk about is literacy and the mechanics of reading and writing and all the rules and the idiosyncrasies of the English language, which we try to sort of force into people's heads, okay? And if you can't do it simply and easily, then that's the only method we have, it seems, is really trying to force it in with repetitive drill. And then there's this other aspect, which is my mind and my thinking. And since dyslexia is a disorder of the mind, every time I went to somebody in education and said, well, what is this disorder and how does it work and what's going on? They would say, well, we don't really know. And they give me a textbook answer. And every time I went to medicine or psychiatry or neurology and said, what's going on? The answer there stops quite quickly as well. And the answer is, if you go to a neurologist, which I've done and talked to neurologists, they will say, well, we don't really know what is causing these disorders, dyslexia, ADD, ADHD, whichever disorder you have. The old model is that it's damage, and that comes from about 100 years ago. The new model, the new understanding is that it's just difference, but we don't know what's causing that difference. So as an adult, I went to try and find out this other side, which was the mind. And for me, that boiled down to, well, what is causing these dyslexic moments that I'm having? Why are the letters going fuzzy? Why am I misreading this word? And I really sort of wanted to find the secrets of my dyslexia, as it were. So I went on this mission and I just looked at everything to do with my mind and everything to do with consciousness and mind. It didn't matter how weird, how wacky, how out there it was, I would give it a go. And I tried everything. At the same time, I was also trying to learn to read, and I was trying different methods. And every sort of few years, I dig down into some new phonics method that would help me learn to read. And my reading was getting better. And looking back now, what I realized is my reading wasn't actually getting better. I was getting older is what was happening. And as my brain was maturing, and my brain was going from a child's brain to an adult's brain, it looked like my reading was getting better, but actually what was happening is I was getting older. But I still couldn't read as at adult level, a university level. So when I eventually at the age of 40, after trying all sorts of things, and I mean really legitimate things as well, so trying to understand psychotherapy, trying to understand psychiatry, trying to understand neurology, I would look at any article, newspaper article, documentary, book, anything that gave me insights. I would interview people. I interviewed dyslexics, anything and everything that would give me insights into my dyslexia and my learning difficulties. Well, eventually at about the age 40, I found a Davis facilitator. And when I sat down with a Davis facilitator for the first time, I asked her the three questions that I'd asked everybody who tried to help me. And the question I used to ask, first of all, is this phonics? And by the time of 40, if they said yes, I was done. That was it. Strike one. Done. I'm not doing it anymore. The next question was, are you dyslexic? And if they said yes or no, if it was a no, that I was pretty much done. And the last one was, what is causing dyslexia? What is it? So when I sat down with the Davis facilitator for the first time and I said, asked her those three questions, she said, well, I'm not dyslexic, but the man who invented the program is. No, this is not phonics. It's different from phonics. And when I said, well, what is the cause of dyslexia? She said, well, all of the symptoms of dyslexia are actually the symptoms of somebody who's become disoriented. And I realized that she, and by extension Ron, when I looked at what Ron was saying, and I looked at videos by Ron, and eventually I read his book, what I realized is Ron was really talking about my dyslexia from the point of view of somebody who has dyslexia, and what was going on in my thinking and how my mind worked. And when I look back now, I realize that we have very well-meaning, kind, intelligent, well-educated people who are trying to help people with their dyslexia, but 90% of them are not dyslexic. And so that's, people are trying to give advice on a problem when they don't have that problem themselves. They're not experiencing what I am experiencing. And not to be glib, but this is a little bit like me trying to advise women on what works best for pregnancy. I can't get pregnant, I can't give birth, I don't have very much, right? So, and I don't mean to be flippant, but that's what it was like. So really the reason I became a Davis facilitator was because I didn't feel that I could stand by and let a child of 8, 9, 10 have the same experience that I have had as a dyslexic adult learning to read. And when we look at Ron's work, what we realize is that he has got to the root cause of dyslexia and many other language-based learning disabilities. In fact, his work goes far beyond dyslexia. He's also does work with autistic people as well. So this is a little bit longer than I think was wanted. So I'll wrap it up now by basically saying, for me as somebody who was severely dyslexic and has been chasing my dyslexia all of my life and really gone down the rabbit hole of my own dyslexia and learning difficulties, it's not what we think it is. The root cause is something really very good, very positive, that really works for many things. It just doesn't work for this thing that we call literacy. So I became a Davis facilitator so I could help others so they don't have to have the same kind of difficulties that I was having. So if you are thinking about doing a Davis program, I strongly recommend you do. I think that's it for now. Sorry it's longer than I was asked to do, but it's a very big question and I was trying to pack it down. Bye for now.
Hi everyone, I'm Emma McAdam. I'm a licensed marriage and family.
Great. Carl, super. Thanks for that. So we've got a number of people in the audience. We're open for questions. You can either use the chat to ask Carl questions, or what's even better is if you want to use the Q&A box. And then we can sort of stack the questions and address them kind of one by one as we go through. I suppose, Carl, I've got a question, just a curious one, really.
Yeah.
Before encountering Davis, so after you were diagnosed as dyslexic, but before encountering Davis, did you meet other individuals who were dyslexic?
Oh yeah, all the time. Just at school, half of the kids I went to school with in the three situations were dyslexic. You gravitate towards each other, right? Birds of a feather kind of flock together. All the kids who can't do it sort of end up going, well, I can't do it too. What's the problem? You all end up in England. What happens is, I think it doesn't happen as much here in Canada, but I think what happens is they stream kids. They have a slightly different system here in Canada. So you have what they call academic stream, and then they have the applied. Don't know what year since I've looked at the English system, but when I was in school, they had different streams, and you had the lower stream. I went into lower stream, and down there, that's all the dyslexic kids down there. So you just meet them all the time. You meet them in jobs, in all the jobs I've met, I'd say, in all the jobs I've done. Yeah, it's probably about half, particularly in the trades, which is where I was for a while. And then I worked in the film industry for a long time. All the creative types, they're all on the spectrum, or half of them are in some capacity. It's interesting watching that video that I did 4 years ago, sort of watching yourself. And I'd say there's little bits I've left out, and I would add to it as well. So I'll do that, and then you can ask some more questions. So I think the first things that I would really address in the video, I think I said 90% of the people I went to try and get help were dyslexic. It certainly felt that way. So when I went to professionals, there was really this, well, I'm the one with the problem and they don't have the problem, so they should be able to help me. And what I realize now looking back is, well, those people are not dyslexic and they don't think like I think, so how can they help me? Right. And I think it's a mistake that a lot of parents make. They sort of go to the school system and say, well, you're a teacher, you should be able to teach my kid to read. But those two things aren't congruent, right? When you're dyslexic, the methods we use in the school system actually don't work very well for us, or not at all in my case.
Right. So that 90%, I don't know what the number is, but it was a high number of professionals that are, you know, very decent, very intelligent, well-educated, well-versed in the subject, but their narrative boils down or gets reduced down to, you can't do this. I'm the professional. I have the opinion on it. And I thought, well, that's really odd. The other piece really in there is that a lot of what we're recommending in schools and privately outside of schools, which I did try to use, is again, it's basically reading and writing and focusing from the point of people who are not dyslexic for people who are not dyslexic. So when I say it doesn't work, what I mean is it doesn't work for me. It works just fine for a grade A student. It's perfect for a grade A student, right? What we as Davis facilitators call lineal thinkers. So yeah, and probably for your B student, it probably works pretty good. For your C student, it's kind of maybe not working so well. And your D and F students, then okay, you've really seriously got a problem here. So I think what happens in education is people say they might meet a very bright ADHD type, what I would call a high functioning dyslexic person who appears to be reading on the surface and looks like it's doing well, but they're putting way too much effort in. And education generally, or that authority figure, points to those people and say, well, look, it works. And you're like, well, let's take a look under the hood. And when you take a look under the hood, it's not working so well, right? Again, I think the other thing I would add to that video is that, you know, I grew up in a regular middle-class family. They were well educated. So I always joke I came from good breeding stock. It wasn't like there was something seriously wrong, right? And actually, high achievers on my mother's side, my uncle went to Oxford University and studied physics, right? My father was a dentist and had later trained as a doctor. My mother had a degree in English literature and then went on and studied psychotherapy. So I was a disappointment leaving school as an illiterate kid. I think the other thing I missed out in that video is the extent of my illiteracy. When I was first tested while I was in college, about age 21, 22, when they tested me, they said I was severely dyslexic and that I had a reading age of about an 8-year-old child, which was quite a slap in the face as a 22-year-old trying to get through a college course that's aimed at low adult level, probably 16, 17-year-old literacy level, right? I went to Brunel Technical College. But the coursework was heavy and you was expected the standard was high, even for that even for the trades, you have to be able to read at a pretty okay level, right? So I just struggled like hell all the way through it. It was very, very difficult. And being sort of diagnosed with dyslexia sort of brings me to my second point. Back then, you know, I'm 57 now, so 30 plus years ago, it was referred to as a disorder. I had a learning disorder. Dyslexia is a disorder of the brain, and that's how it's talked about clinically. Medically, it is still talked about in that way. In the school systems, it's talked about as a disability. Well, you know, pick your poison, right? They're neither of them are particularly pleasant to swallow. But again, I don't really think even sort of the political correctness that we have today, that terminology on the clinical side, it hasn't changed. On the educational side, if you keep on pushing, you have that same terminology. But when I ask, you know, what's causing that, it always ends up as we don't know. And actually the term medically disorder just means short way of saying we don't know what's causing that problem. So it's a very short version of that, right? So I was really curious. Once I sort of got over the initial shock, I thought, well, if I'm going to have even a half decent life, I've got to be able to figure out what this is, because it was just affecting everything in my life, everything from my relationships to self-esteem, the way I thought about myself, even the things I was good at, I didn't value, because the only thing that we sort of valued for the first in society is we can leverage this ability to read and literacy, and it gives us a massive advantage over everybody else if you can. That's what I now realize, that now I have the ability to read as an adult the leverage is massive over people that can't and everyone else. So if you have really good, strong literacy and numeracy skills, that is a distinct advantage in our society. And our society is most definitely hierarchical, right? So there's and then at the same time, I really disvalued the positive side of it, because I think for a lot of dyslexics, and this is sometimes where I get sort of a bit, it's not like I don't like the title of Ron's books, and it's not like I don't like this idea of a gift. I actually do. There's a huge upside to being on these spectrums. The trouble is when you are dyslexic and you're diagnosed as dyslexic and you're struggling with it, you don't have an out. It doesn't feel gifted. It just feels horribly stuck. And it's kind of crazy making, actually. For me, it was because on one level, I had this reading age of an 8-year-old child, right, as an adult, right? But I had this other skill. So for me, it was quite a dichotomy. I was like, well, how come I'm sort of disabled, disordered, disability, can't do these things over here, but over here I've got these skills and talents that other people don't seem to have, right? What's going on? And that was actually, I express it as very frustrating, very sort of crazy making. And then you go down that rabbit hole of what I call the dark side of dyslexia, and it gets very dark indeed down there. And it then follows on that you see all the mental health issues that you see with very severe drug addiction and all this kind of stuff. So it can be, I think people in one way sort of play it light. They say, oh, we're just dyslexic, don't worry about it. And on the other side, we're sort of really scared of the dark side. And I think what Davis does is it allows you to really understand yourself as a person, right? Because we have different programs to deal with different difficulties. So whatever difficulty you're having, really understand that side of yourself. So you can really turn this kind of I can't that we've got going on as dyslexics, which is sort of part true, part learned helplessness, part all kinds of stuff, and turn all of that into, well, I can to the best of my ability. Okay? I mean, if you tested me now, I probably wouldn't test like a grade A student who's just gone through university, because I've had 40 years of not being able to do it. Right? But I can now read anything I want at grade level. I run my own business. I can now write an email in 10 minutes rather than 2 hours. So there's a marked difference, and you don't really truly understand that difference until you're sort of out of this bubble world. You just don't get it. It's not explainable. I've tried. The only way you can actually really understand it is by doing it. The proof is in the pudding. And I think I've met a lot of critics of Davis over the years. They say things like it's not evidence-based. That you go down that rabbit hole, and statistically, the numbers of illiterate people in English-speaking countries is frightening. It's somewhere between 15 and 20% of adults in English-speaking countries are completely illiterate. Right? In England, I think it's about 18%. And fully literate adult reading at a grade A level literacy level, so adult level, it's about 20% in English-speaking countries. And then we fudge the other numbers. And I have a video coming about that. It's not when, so that we've been presented with this paradigm that the way we teach people to read sort of works for everybody. I have a video on this on my YouTube channel. I call it the paradigm of a learning disability. And it's just not accurate. It's just almost, it's like a bad bill of goods you've all been sold. And both the negative and the positive, the authority figures in the room. Okay. So say the authority figure of education, the authority figure of medicine, and how that breaks down. They're very, very good at, and have got very good. They've got valuable stuff there, and they've got very good at identifying basically what I can't do. Okay. What they have for solutions there is only 3 solutions, only 3 of them, and they're limited in their ability to help. They basically are medication, traditional methods for teaching people to read and maths and do academics, and then talk therapy. And they have limited impact, I think. It's my experience. I suppose I'm Davis's guinea pig from one point of view, because I've had this experience as a child. I've had the same experience as an adult. I did Davis, trained as a Davis facilitator, and now I've been working for 15 years as a Davis facilitator, and I've worked with hundreds of kids at this point. And the only time Davis does not work is if you don't do it. That's it. If you want a solution, you're going to get some relief out of it. Can't guarantee what, but you're going to get something. And I think that like I said, the authority figures of education, medicine, it's not that it's malice on their part. It's not that it's a lie. It's not a conspiracy theory. I think dyslexic people love conspiracy theories because it feels very personal. It's not that. It's that they've got very good things there and they can list all the things I can't do. So if I can't read, I can't write, I can't spell, they're going to label that, put that into a little box like on a periodic table of learning disabilities and call that a name. And then they're going to do another one, they give that another name, and they give that another name. And I talked about this in a video. It's almost like they're looking for a periodic table of learning disabilities. But then when you ask, well, what's causing any of them? Eventually, if you push on it long enough, they say, well, we don't know. And you say, okay, great. And what I tell my clients or the parents of my clients is, if you take it out of context and say, well, if I have a problem, if I don't know what's causing that problem, how do I know whether what I'm going to do is going to be effective? I actually can't measure success. So a lot of what the authority figures are seeing as success, because they don't know cause, it's a false measurement, or it gives them a false measurement. I was trying to explain this to a little autistic girl that I worked with a few weeks ago, and she had full of questions, this very bright autistic girl. I said, well, could I gauge how old you are by putting you on a set of bathroom scales? She was like, no. And I said, could I gauge how old you are by measuring your height? Because me and my mother are the same height, right? Well, I'm 57, she's 85, right? So it's a false measurement if we use height. So I think what education has done through no fault of its own, it's really just historical. They're using a false measurement for people like me, and they sort of don't know what they don't know. So when you go and ask people in education about Davis or this other thing, it sounds a bit weird to everybody. Well, it's because they're missing pieces of the puzzle, and they're very big pieces of the puzzle.
So in fact, Sue Hall, who's coming on after you, she's author of a book called Fish Don't Climb Trees, which is exactly that point, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's more of my story. It goes all over the place. I could talk about this for hours if you want me to, but you can ask me questions and I'll jump in wherever you need.
There are some questions in the chat.
Exactly, there are a number of questions there. So we've got somebody saying that was so interesting. No, hang on. Let me go back. Here we go. So somebody's saying, as a child, no one ever said the word dyslexia. I was only diagnosed at age 30. My youngest is also dyslexic, worse than me, and despite early diagnosis and reception forced by myself, the education system does not support children. I wish I had known about this program. My mother was the only one to teach me to read and spell, repetition, and lots of additional time in the holidays doing extra work. So that wasn't a question, but just an observation. We do have a question, other than the Davis program, what other therapies would you recommend for children?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I often get this question. So to me, okay, simply put, there's Davis over here, okay, and everything else is a very, 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 very distant second. Okay, and the reason for this is it's not like they're useless. It's not they don't work. It's that when we look at what Ron really discovered about dyslexia and reading, if we're just talking about the reading side of it, okay, literacy side of it, if we think of our dyslexia like a light switch, it can get turned on, and I don't know how to turn it off, okay? So it gets turned on. When we really understand Ron's ideas, what we see is literally just teaching a child the alphabet can turn on their dyslexia, and they don't know how to turn it off. And this starts at 6, 7 years old. So when you think of other approaches, any other approach, if you're not dealing with the cause, then any other approach is just going to turn it on, right? And the kid doesn't know how to turn it off. So yeah, you can go do lots of phonics work and lots of phonics programs and spend a lot of time doing that and not really get what you need from it. What I found is after I've done Davis, all the stuff that I did before, I can now sort out as useful or not useful. Right? And some of it's useful. I mean, some of the way we teach kids to read with, say, another program like we use here, Empower, which is in Canada, which is an adaptation of Orton Gillingham. It's kind of multi-sensory. It's sort of everything that everybody else is using realistically. Now I look at that and say, well, for me, there are some pieces that are useful and I can pick out the bits I need, right? And I can use those bits and learn more about the things I could never learn before. Like I never used to be able to spell the word enough. My favorite example of this is I say to people, if I say a word anaugaha, I'm using phonics, and when you pronounce the word enough, it actually reads anaugaha. Well, that's not anything. And if you try spelling it phonetically, it's ENUFF or single F. Well, that's not enough either, right? So a lot of the ways, particularly English, we teach kids to read actually compound the confusion, because at least half of the English language is not phonetical. You've got to know about 10,000 rules in English to really understand it. So what happens is it just creates more confusion. So, I mean, if you've got a limited budget and you're sort of looking at other things, I would just say, don't bother. Like, just don't. If you've got a kid and you know that they're struggling, they've got any kind of learning label, then just go Davis first, and then you'll be able to figure out everything else, right? Or it's because it's really, another way of thinking about it is this. What people are doing, I explain this to little ones that come to see me, is if we imagine yourself like a house, people are looking at the roof and they're sort of trying to fix the roof in school, right? The parents are trying to fix the walls, and the problem's in the basement. And as soon as you correct this, so look at the house and it looks all lopsided, but as soon as you fix the basement, which is doing Davis, the rest is just fine. I mean, I basically, I'm not sure what other facilitators will think of this, but I'll say it anyway, because it's what I say to my clients. I basically guarantee that if a kid is over 9 years old, I can improve their reading 1 whole year in 1 week with me. And if that doesn't happen, there's going to be another reason. Okay. So I regularly get kids who come in at sort of 12 years, they're reading 2 or 3 years below their grade level. The minimum I get is 1 year improvement. And I've had that for years now. And then they have a path they can go down to get them up to grade level. I very often get more than that, depending on the kid, depending on the label. So yeah, everything else is a distant second, you know.
Yeah, but also, I mean, I would absolutely second that. But you have someone coming in who, at the beginning of the week, they're reading often way below their age level, but what they're reading, they're finding difficult and with all sorts of strain and stress going on mentally. And then at the end of the week, they're coming out, they're at or close to their age in what they're reading, and they're finding it easy.
Yeah.
And it's those two measures together that I always find make Davis so powerful, right?
Yeah. Yeah. For me, if you've got any, I'll say it again. For me personally, I've run an experiment on my own life, if for want of a better word. Okay. I was severely dyslexic. I was tested twice in 2 different countries using 2 different methods, several years apart. The first time it was basically reading at about the level of an 8-year-old. Then in Canada, several years later, it was being diagnosed reading at about 9-year-old level. And the reason I had that test is I was going into a phonics program, and I did it for 2 years as an adult. Okay. I had a gap of about 6 months, so I did it over about 3 years. And it was standard. It's what we do in every country, in every English speaking country. There's nothing, it's what you're getting at home. Okay. What you're getting in England. And I did that. I finished it. I paid for it. I was doing that once a week. Then I was meeting with 2 other tutors in the evening. So I was doing it 3 times a week as an adult in my late 20s, early 30s. So I was working hard at it, reading on my own, in doing other sort of therapies as well, if I could find something that sort of interested me. And then when I completed it, I said, could you test me again? And they did. And now I was reading at the level of a 10-year-old. I gone up 1 year in or 2 years of solid trying. And so I then at that point I had to really hate on for anything that wasn't for everything really. I got very depressed again. I got very angry again. I just thought this isn't working. And then afterwards they said just you need practice. And what actually happened is I started to decline again, because now I understand trigger words and I understand it in a different way now. So by the time I got to Davis at age 40, I had literally tried everything. The weird, the wacky, the out of the box stuff, diet, supplements, just like everything that came along. And, this just it's just what they call it, Jacob's ladder, I think, don't they call it that? It's just a direct route to the problem. So that's a long answer, but it's a big question. And I think most people waste a lot of time looking at all these other things because they're going back to the authority figure, trying to force the authority figure to help the child. And the authority figure doesn't actually have very much. I'm sorry if that's not the answer you wanted, but...
Well, Carl, we haven't talked yet about the strength side and the gift side of your dyslexia. And you talked about being, when you were sort of down the hole of it, of the gift side of seeming really remote. But I'm aware that you have recorded a video recently that celebrates the gift side of your dyslexia. Would this be a good moment to show that?
Yeah, sure.
Perfect. So I'm just going to, because of what happened last time with the where we were going to show it, I'm just going to do that on YouTube.
So what I would say about this is most of this, I didn't think I was very good when I did this, when I was making these things. And I made, I'd say nearly everything that you're going to see, I did before Davis. So it was
really?
a lot of it was, I think maybe the first piece that you're going to see is I made one while I was training as a facilitator. But everything else goes back to when I was at college. The chairs go back to when I was at college. So most of it is at a reading age of a sort of 8 to 10-year-old.
Do you have many of those items still in your possession?
Quite a few of them. Yeah, quite a few of them.
There's another question in the chat. Would you send your child to mainstream schools or homeschool your child?
Oh, yes, good point.
Yeah. Me personally, I think it depends on the school. Okay, there's a lot of variables in there. What I would do is I go do Davis, do your follow-up work, and then pick your school. If you can, their schools range from everything from top private schools to really tough schools where, like I went to in my last couple of years. So I think it really depends. I've seen a homeschooling situation do really well. I've also seen it not so good. So I think it's what I would do to really answer that question is go and talk to a Davis facilitator. Take your situation to a facilitator and have them talk with you about what's the best approach, because they can guide you through that a little bit once you do a program. That's what I've done. And they both can work well.
The Dyslexia Resources Pack page that we shared this morning, that we'll share again at the end of today, also has some guidance on, it shares some guidance on, when your child is in a mainstream school in the UK and when your child is in an independent school. We haven't yet developed the home education guidance, but the home education guidance to some extent is kind of easy. It's kind of do Davis and make Davis the center of your home education program until you've gone through it, and then build everything else on top. But we do have those other two pieces. And other than that, I would completely agree with Carl. Book an initial assessment with a facilitator, and then you'll get an expert, a professional view on, what can be the next steps. So Carl, here goes. Okay. Okay. Sound-wise, that was okay for everyone in the end?
I didn't hear it on my end, but
Hello,
I've watched
my name is
lots. So
and I am the
Okay.
operator for business.
Hoping that the absence of further comments in the chat means it was okay for everybody else. Perfect. So, Carl, what I'll do if that's okay in that case is we'll just briefly share a couple of further slides about the Davis approach generally, as we, great, as we kind of promised that we would. And so there's a little bit of overlap with what we've already said before, and what Axel said in his talks, but just in case, for those of you who haven't been with us potentially, the Davis program, there's actually, we can't really say Davis program, it's Davis programs. There's at the total now, I think, of 9 different programs that are available across the entire neurodivergent spectrum. There's Davis Mastery for Dyslexia, which is the program that's been the central focus of what Carl's been talking about, in his lived experience. There's also Davis Foundations for Reading, which is a best start reading program for children at the beginning of their reading career from age 5 or 6 through till 8, who've not yet developed a learning difficulty. And that's very much closely related to Davis learning strategies that Axel was talking about this morning. Then there's Davis Mastery for Attention, focusing on ADHD and any other undiagnosed challenges with attention focus. There's Davis Mastery for Maths, which is the subject of my second book, Counting on Fingers, and a very powerful approach to numeracy and mathematical operations and dyscalculia. Then there's some of our team are also licensed to provide Davis Autism Approach programs. There's Davis Autism Approach for the more the speaking end of autism, whereas Davis Stepping Stones is for more towards the non-speaking end. You'll be hearing about both of those tomorrow in our sessions, and also for younger autistic individuals. Then we have Davis Concepts for Life as a powerful executive function program, and then there's an early years version of that program. Here in the UK, all of these programs are available, start at a cost starting at £306 a month for spread over 10 months, and then that's it. It's a time limited commitment. The work is by us is done much quicker, much more intensively, as Carl was saying, typically over about 5 days. But most of our team are happy to spread the cost of what we offer over a period of 10 months. So that makes it affordable. And our sister organization, Gifts for Dyslexia, is able to, with funds permitting, is able to provide bursary assistance for those who can't afford a program, to ensure that as far as we're able, cost is not a barrier to accessing a program. And so just as we did earlier today, we're going to just launch a pop-up form, just in case any of you would like to book a free expert consultation with us, particularly if you're in the UK or Ireland or South Africa or Tanzania. This is something that we're very, we'd be delighted to help with that. And so that's should be now up on your screen. And if you do, book a consultation with us, then what will happen will be that, oh, by the way, the form is quite long, so you need to keep scrolling down and down and down and down until you get to the bottom and then hit submit. Okay, so what will happen if you book that consultation, which is, as I say, free of charge, is that an expert facilitator will listen to you or your child's needs. They'll let you know what are the options for help within the Davis solutions. And if you want, you can then book in for a more in-depth face-to-face consultation at a cost of £180. And this will enable your facilitator to take a detailed case and then give you an informed view of what Davis solution is the best fit for you or for your child. And they'll tell you what benefits to expect. And if a Davis solution doesn't seem suitable at all, then they'll tell you that too. And as I was saying earlier, we do have a resources pack, which we're offering, free of charge to anybody for whom that's interesting, and useful. There's a little scroll through of that. And I'm just going to drop the clickable link to that pack into the chat. That will also come through with the recordings on Sunday when you get your complete pack of all the session recordings from this event. But if you want that now, that's going into the chat. And in anticipation of tomorrow's topics, we also have, no, that's it for now. As also mentioned earlier today, we have a couple of WhatsApp news feeds, and we would love it if you would like to join those. They are news feeds as opposed to chat groups, so please don't be worried if you join them. You're not going to be bombarded with messages all the time. Most of the time, the groups are set so that only the administrators can post in there. So what that then means is you will get early information about any events, any initiatives that we're conducting. You'll be one of the first to hear. But then every couple of weeks or so, we open up the news feed for an hour for everybody to comment, and it then becomes a chat. And so essentially it becomes a Q&A session. We have a lot of our facilitators usually contributing, and you can then spend an hour asking us any questions that you want to in the news feed. So that's just a kind of a community outreach service that we're very happy to provide to you. And I'm just going to drop the clickable links for that into the chat as well. So there is, if you have a phone pointing at a bigger screen, you can zap the QR codes that are on screen. If not, then there's a couple of clickable links gone into the chat. So we have an Africa link, particularly, aimed at South Africa and Tanzania, where we're particularly active. And then we also have a UK and Ireland link. If you're joining us from any countries that are not in Africa and that are not the UK or Ireland, then the UK and Ireland newsfeed is the one to join, because that also has a kind of a worldwide profile, and we'll be very happy to see you in there. And finally, just a word about Davis Parent Power, Dyslexia. I talked about this morning. This is a course that I have developed, which doesn't, it's not focused on enabling an individual to address their fundamental core literacy challenges. This is more looking at the child who comes home, the bright but struggling picture thinking child who's saying, "Mum, there's a geography test tomorrow. I haven't a clue. I do not get how photosynthesis works in biology. Chemistry seems like a foreign language. I can't remember the dates in history." So this is an empowerment course for the parents of those bright but struggling learners. And it's a limited set of tailored Davis strategies to help picture thinking children with their school subject learning, in which you also gain unique Davis-driven insights into how dyslexics think and therefore learn. So this does not replace a Davis Mastery for Dyslexia program, but it's a fabulous adjunct to it that empowers and equips you as a parent to really be, the best support that you can be for your child. And I'm just going to take a moment, if we've still got a moment, just to play a video from a parent who experienced this with her, for her, in respect of her son, and what then came out of that for her and for her son.
The first thing that I found exceptionally useful was to understand how Miles reads or doesn't read, or what he sees because of his dyslexia. And then, of course, how very quickly, over the course of only 6 weeks, did I appreciate that I was suddenly equipped with so many tools to be able to help him to speed up the learning, where it took away a load of stress for him and for me. We started seeing immediate results, only implementing a tiny proportion of what could be done. Going through some of the exercises as a parent and being able to then implement what you learn, but also seeing across the group of people and parents that were on the course, how quickly and easily it works. So as soon as he started using plasticine actively to learn his weekly spelling, we saw huge improvements, and he suddenly went from 2 words to 4 words to 6 words to getting all of them correct. Yeah, and how fast it started happening. Calmed me right down. Our relationship improved, and I think that we have something really special together by having done and implemented all of these various tools that we can use to be able to learn and progress, which is what I really wanted for him.
Great. And perhaps, Carl, we might round off with a word from Ron. This is
Yeah, absolutely.
This is that quote from the back of the Gift of Dyslexia book, which a lot of us talk about as our goosebumps quote, where Ron says that the gift of dyslexia is the gift of mastery. And when someone masters something, it becomes a part of that person. It becomes part of the individual's thought and creative process. It adds the quality of its essence to all subsequent thought and creativity of the individual. So Carl, thank you, a huge thank you for being here today.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's been a fantastic experience, a very moving experience, you know, hearing your story.